Hey traders, welcome to Charts and Coffee. Happy Wednesday morning, everybody. Hope everyone is having a good morning, has a game plan. And if you don't, we're going to walk through the game plan here this morning. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to type them on in. All right, so every day we want to make sure that as we're starting off the day, we have a list of symbols that have the highest probability for follow through. We just finished up a class. Well, we're kind of just starting it, but it's a neat way to take our 4-hour classroom immersion and then take it into the live market right now. And I'm really looking forward to it because proof's in the pudding, right? It's one thing to take a class, but the next step is how do I implement it now? Not in an idealized uptrend or downtrend. How do I deal with the market that I have right now? So we'll talk about that, but there is still time to join. We're starting off the first of 4 classroom sessions today at 3, so 6 hours from now. But if you haven't checked it out, if you're struggling in this environment, we're going to be closing out 3 winners, one in gold, basic materials, and Cisco this week. And we've actually got another 3 positions on. So if you're not finding you're getting enough trades, you don't know where to look, please check this out because this is a process that you can repeat for the rest of your career. And I'm super passionate about this because I'm still hearing all sorts of bearish commentary out there. And it's killing me because not only is it wrong, it's an opportunity cost. So let's really drive home what's happening right now in terms of the broader averages and sort of take this top-down take. If the NASDAQ and the S&P are moving higher, we know that for the most part, tech is leading the charge. So when those two are moving together, tech is leading the charge. If the Dow is participating as well, then we know that financials, healthcare, and likely energy are also participating. So you see how the Dow overlaps the S&P a little bit, and the NASDAQ overlaps with the S&P a little bit. So the S&P is just this interesting combination of those two because the sectors within the S&P and therefore the stocks reflect both those two other averages. There's very little that the Dow and the NAS have in common other than a handful of tech stocks. So XLK stocks, your Microsofts, your Apples, have a widespread influence, but the Dow is on a tech average the way really the S&P is, and most definitely the NASDAQ is. So if the Dow is moving higher, it's likely for reasons aside from tech. And one of the things we talk about a lot is what kind of participation are we seeing? And I don't mean some kind of indicator talking about decliners and advancers or ticks, anything like that. Those are actually inherently not anyone's fault. It's a faulty calculation. Whoa, Rob, you're going right after the sacred cows. Yeah, here's why. If you're looking at a tick, trend, advanced decliner, put call ratio, any of that stuff, any of these market internals, what market? Has anyone ever stopped to ask what market internal is that actually? It's not of any market, because the reason that the equity markets move the way they do is because we have high concentration weighting. A small number of stocks have a disproportionate influence. And if you're underestimating what a top 10, top 11 stock can do to a broader average, take a look at what ASML did yesterday to the SMH. Was this a sell-off at NVIDIA? No. Was this Taiwan Semi crashing to the earth? No. What it was a stock with earnings. Does anyone here know how much Raghee hates earnings season? I hate earnings season. Was there really any reason for ASML to sell off 150 points? Yeah. They missed this, and this is disappointing. And 2025 looks like there's a slowdown in the recovery. Whatever. What this is a stock that has been below. This is a really great lesson here, gang. Was ASML a bullish stock? And I know I can't see your faces or your hands, but does anyone here look at this chart and say, this was a bullish name? No. This was already a name sitting in the bearish side of the equator. It's in the bearish hemisphere. Look at all the red candles. No one should look at a chart with the top tier candles, or even if you're using my classic grab and see a bunch of red and go, I'm bullish. No way. Now, this is a really hyper exaggeration of the kind of weakness that could happen, but this was in the bearish hemisphere. So why on earth would we expect ASML to rocket up through 900 and continue an uptrend that isn't, right? Now, that aside from anyone being bullish ASML in the first place, underestimating that earnings season, this is what we need to rename earnings season, aside from I don't like it. But really, tactically, what is it? Tail wags the dog. That's the season we're in, where a single stock, if it is heavily weighted, having a big move is going to disproportionately affect the sector. Now, when the sector starts to sell off, all the names in that sector, let me take you on over here, all those names in the sector are going to struggle because selling SMH means selling all this stuff to a different degree depending on their percentage weighting. So did Taiwan Semi necessarily have a bad day? Or was it ASML dragging the SMH down and then in turn affecting the other 10 top weighted stocks? That's the way the equity markets work, right? That's why I say forget internals. They're not measuring what really is. And so, looking at something like ASML, I just got to shake my head. Why would anybody be long that in the first place? Not that 120 point sell off was in the cards. I'm not saying it's any predictive thing, but why would I look at ASML or even LRCX as a bullish name when it can't even get above and stay above its 200, those white dots? AMD I like, but it's a little tricky, isn't it? AMD I have to be a lot more cautious about, but it's interesting that it's making a mean reversion. It's not too far away from the equator, but be cautious there, right? What's better? Better would be likely things like Taiwan Semi or even Intel. So, this is the relative performance or the trade this, not that, as I like to say, part of trading that does actually have tangible account growth metrics. If we're not trading things that have a probability of higher highs, then what the heck are we doing if we're buying a call or getting long shares, right? Okay, so, when I take a look at SMH, and I'm sure a lot of folks have questions about it, we have to then do a couple things. Number one, ASML is, I think, fifth or sixth heaviest weighted stock in SMH. What about the other 4 or 5? We have a lot more high impact names coming. And, the concern is if ASML is kind of coming out with a warning, what are the likelihood that other stocks in a similar type situation, maybe not as reliant on AI as ASML is, maybe some even more, what are the chances that some of them would also report slowdowns? What I would recommend during earnings season is that the stocks that are heavily weighted know what they are. And I don't mean some cutesy calendar with a bunch of logos telling you what's coming up this week. No offense, but that's next to useless. We need to have a far more planned approach. What does that mean? I'm not picking favorites, maybe a little bit. I think this is the best site for anyone who's tracking earnings or even trading them. And it's not the earnings themselves that I would ever recommend trading. It's the ramp up, it's the rally, it's the anticipation, it's the discounting, right? That preparation that makes a whole lot more sense as a swing trade. All right. So if you go to something like Estimize and find whatever you'd like, but the reason I like this, and I'll tell you all, this is a free site, by the way. You can use the free version. I do have a premium version, but it's not a bank breaker or anything. It's a really affordable thing. But what you can do even with the free version is go in here and follow the stocks that have high concentration weighting. So when I'm scrolling through here, I want to be aware of what those other names in the top 10 are, because if this is what ASML did to the SMH, think about what Qualcomm or Taiwan Semi, NVIDIA, think of the kind of impact they could have to the upside or the downside here. Yesterday, ASML hit the second standard deviation of the typical price movement range and kept right on going. Now, I'm less interested in ASML than I am, say, other stocks that fared a little bit better. So let's talk the book, because at the end of the day, I don't really care what some analyst has to say about the broader averages. Tell me what you have and I'll know what you think, right? Let's normalize that. Instead of predictive garbage and analysis, tell me what you're in and I'll know what you think. So what are we in right now? We're in Cisco at the moment. We're in basic materials and we're in gold. And all three of these are expiring this Friday. They're all in break even and profitable, already realized profitable trade management. So I'm just, the sand is running out of the hourglass on these. I wish not, because I like all three of them. Yesterday, where we entered PayPal, NVIDIA, I actually grabbed some NVIDIA in that move, and we bought SPY. So that is what we're in right now. Whether or not these continue, that's up to the market. My job is to find things that have the probability of continuation. So there you go. All right. That's what we have right now. Those are the open trades in the Sector Secrets Mastery, those 6 names. 3 of them are expiring Friday. The other 3 are open positions that just triggered yesterday. Is it going to be a tricky week? Absolutely. I am going to keep all 3 of those on a fairly tight leash, because Opex is Friday. Opex is another interesting phenomena, not as irritating and as useless as earnings, but it is a single day where the technicals, the trends, the support, the resistance almost don't matter. It's one thing and one thing alone. How can the most number of options be worthless by the end of the day? So it's really a game on open interest. And I don't use max pain, although that's kind of the idea, but there are different levels of support and resistance that you'll see on the option chain based on open interest. And that's where the kind of gravitational pull is going to be. So be aware of size, and then ask yourself, am I in a position to benefit from those options expiring worthless? Is this support? Is this resistance for the position that I have? So those 3 will be on a pretty tight leash going into Opex. All right. What else do we have here? So I know there's going to be some SMH questions. And, I think the biggest thing about this ASML thing is, why was anybody bullish this stock in the first place? I mean, look at it. So again, this was not a 150 point sell, 120 point sell off was not on my bingo card, but that is where we sit. And it looks like pre-market. Wow. Pre-market, this thing's at 707. I mean, really, it's kind of the lesser of who cares, but I know that it could have some impact on the NVIDIA that we bought. So we've got I'll tell you right now. Right now, we're in the 130 calls, for October 25. So that gives you an idea of what we're in. And again, anytime you're listening to anybody, we have to talk about our book. I think talking your book has taken on a negative connotation when we talk about the folks who decide some hedgie comes on CNBC, no names mentioned, and talks up China. So everybody frenzies themselves into China. Does anybody think that this person has not already bought the very thing that he's going to go talk about on the television show? I'm not saying it was insincere. I'm just saying, does anyone think a hedge fund is out there to do a public service announcement? The naivete of the financial media public is up there with tooth fairies. I do believe in Santa Claus, though. All right. Take a look at what's going on with something like this. This is why we don't chase things higher. This is why we want to remember that if we are bullish something, it can't be because someone else said, hey, this is a really great idea. This is the reality of China right now. Who chased this thing higher, a la GameStop, into 37? Somebody did, right? Somebody did, and somebody sold it there too, right? So those are things to keep in mind. Would I put SMCI with those names in terms of the weighting of semiconductors? So if we're taking a look at semiconductor weighting, and that's a great question. And this is the kind of stuff, if this is the kind of stuff that interests you, this is exactly what we do in the Mastery Gang. This is a kind of Cliff Notes version of a lot of what we're doing to find the trades that we're finding in the Sector Secrets Mastery. So after NVIDIA, Taiwan Semi, ABGO, AMD, et cetera, SMCI is not a top weighted name in semiconductors, which I think a lot of times surprises traders. SMCI, when you think about the weighting of this particular stock, is not in semiconductors. It was in the Russell, I believe, for a bit, but it's not necessarily weighted in the sectors that some of these other names are. I know it's SMCI. It's, a name that a lot of people assume super microcomputer should be in SMH. It's not. And by the way, this is the problem with not having, great question, by the way. Who asked me about SMCI? Yeah, Ember, great question. All right, here's a mistake that a lot of traders make. Avoid, Charlie Munger said it best. Don't try to be clever. Don't try to be smart. Just try not to do anything dumb. Trading SMCI, presuming it's going to behave like it did when it was practically a meme stock for the first 3 months of the year. By the way, everything was going up the first 3 months of the year. It was some of the best trading in terms of taking advantage of uptrends since likely 2020, 2021. It was an amazingly bullish quarter, as there was a lot of expectation that the Federal Reserve was going to cut as soon as March, likely May, right? A lot of optimism that started off this year. Then what happened? Take a look at the red candles. Take a look at when it broke the equator. Why on earth? It's just not a name that I have any interest in because the structure just isn't there. And what happens is sometimes traders see this and are expecting that type of behavior to return rather than saying, hey, it had its time. Beautiful movement. I'm happy for those folks who grew their accounts with that, but that is not going to be an account growing symbol. It's ugly. It's an ugly name. Could it have a surge again? Yeah, but it's not something that would end up on my watch list in the way that, say, other uptrends would. And this is just a typical mistake of, hey, I love this stock. It was great earlier in the year. And, oh, I can hear my smoothie being made right now. My Sector Secrets folks will have the smoothie flavor of the day shortly. So that's where I think there's a lot of confusion about, well, what should I trade? What we should trade is not our favorite stock, but rather whatever stock has the probability of climbing. ES and YM look better than NQ right now. So I would keep an eye on those two. They've broken out through levels that are important. The NASDAQ breakout is still in process, meaning the roughly 3-week range that we were stuck in on the ES, which was pierced on the 9th. And then we really saw some great follow through last Friday. We're still in an early stage of NASDAQ doing something similar, right? Dow's already done it. NASDAQ will probably be the third. I wouldn't hold my breath on the Russell until regional banks can kind of get over 60 and stay above that level. Russell's really choppy. So, and it's nowhere near its breakout level. It's got to be above, say, 2310 to really have that same kind of move. And that's daily chart stuff. Yeah, and as far as ITB goes, I'm with you, Dave. ITB, XHB, these were doing very well early part of the year because expectations were for the rate cuts, and home builders, home construction does very well when the mortgage rates start to drop. There's expectation for, watch the building permits, watch the new home sales, existing home sales, home starts, that kind of thing. But yeah, there are some really great trends in ITB as well. All right, gang. So that's a wrap. As always, thank you so much for being here for Charts and Coffee. And I will see you all tomorrow. Same time, same station.